In 532 AD, a sports riot nearly ended the Roman Empire. By the end of the week, half of Constantinople was burned to the ground, and approximately 30,000 people were dead. To understand how this happened, you need to understand Roman sports fandom. Chariot racing in Constantinople wasn't just entertainment, it was identity. The city had two dominant teams, the Blues and the Greens, each with massive, fiercely loyal fan bases. Earlier factions, the Reds and Whites, had been absorbed into them by the 6th century, leaving two rival tribes who hated each other completely. This wasn't casual fandom. These factions doubled as street gangs, political movements, and occasionally violent mobs, comparable to modern football hooliganism, but with arson and murder layered in. Emperor Justinian I openly favored the Blues, which only deepened the divide. In 531 AD, members of both factions were arrested for murder, following deaths during chariot race rioting. Most were executed as planned. But on January 10, 532 AD, two of the condemned men, one blue, one green, survived their hanging when the scaffolding broke beneath them. Monks rushed them to sanctuary inside a church. A crowd gathered to protect them. Justinian, deep in delicate peace negotiations with Persia, didn't want a crisis on his hands, so he postponed. He scheduled new chariot races for January 13th and quietly commuted the men's sentences to imprisonment, not a pardon, just delay. It would prove to be a catastrophic miscalculation. On race day, the crowd packed into the Hippodrome, Constantinople's massive chariot stadium. Throughout the races, they chanted, pleading with Justinian for mercy. By the 22nd race of 24, there had still been no response. Then something nobody expected happened. A new chant rose from the crowd. Long live the merciful Blues and Greens. The two rival factions, who had hated each other for generations, were suddenly chanting, together, united, against the emperor. That evening, the unified mob adopted a new word as their rallying cry, Nika, Greek for victory or conquer. The exact word fans used to cheer on their favorite charioteer, now turned directly against Justinian himself. They marched on the Praetorium, the prison, freed the inmates, and burned the building to the ground. The riot had begun. Justinian tried diplomacy. He dismissed two unpopular officials the crowd had specifically demanded be removed. It didn't work. The fires kept spreading. The mob set the Hippodrome itself ablaze. Then the Senate House. Then, devastatingly, the original Hagia Sophia, one of Constantinople's most important churches, collapsed entirely in the flames. By Thursday, the rebels had gone even further. They declared a rival emperor. A nobleman named Hypatius, nephew of a previous emperor, was crowned by the mob, whether he wanted the position or not. Justinian's throne and his life were now genuinely at risk. His advisors urged him to flee the city. According to the historian Procopius, it was Empress Theodora, once a performer, now empress, who stopped him. She reportedly told her husband that those who have worn the crown should never survive its loss, declaring she would rather die as empress than live as a fugitive. Royal purple, she is said to have told him, makes a fine burial shroud. Justinian stayed. On January 18th, 5 days into the chaos, Justinian made his move. He sent the eunuch Narses into the crowd at the Hippodrome carrying a bag of gold to quietly bribe the blue faction leaders, reminding them the rival emperor they'd just crowned was actually a green sympathizer. The Blues began to waver. Then Justinian unleashed his generals, Belisarius and Mundus, alongside loyal troops, directly into the packed Hippodrome where the rebellion had gathered. The exits were sealed. What followed was not a battle. It was a massacre. By the end of the day, approximately 30,000 people lay dead. Hypatius, the rival emperor the mob had crowned, was executed. The rebellion was over. What came after is the part most people never hear. Justinian used the devastation as an opportunity. He rebuilt Constantinople, and on the ashes of the original Hagia Sophia, he commissioned an entirely new one, the structure that still stands in Istanbul today, considered one of the greatest architectural achievements in human history. He went on to rule for another 3 decades. His empire's borders, at their peak under his reign, were never matched again for the next 900 years. A sports riot nearly destroyed him. Instead, it became the foundation of his legacy. Constantinople's chariot racing factions never fully recovered their old power. Historians note that in the decades after the riot, the same intense tribal passion people had poured into the Blues and Greens shifted somewhere else entirely, into religious and theological arguments. The factions changed. The human need to belong to a tribe and to fight for it did not.